The love that survived beyond the grave. In every corner of the world, there are stories that people hear, cry over, and eventually forget. But some stories never fade away. Their pain never grows old, and their memories never disappear. This is a story of two hearts that were made for each other, yet fate refused to let them stay together. This is the story of Zahid and Safia. On the edge of a distant, poor, and forgotten village in Afghanistan stood an old mud house. During rainy nights, water dripped through its roof, and during the freezing winters, cold winds slipped through the cracks in its walls. This was the home of Zahid, a boy whose greatest possessions in life were a pen, a few old books, and his mother's prayers. There were days when his mother had no food to serve for dinner. She would smile in front of her children, but when everyone fell asleep, she would quietly cry in the darkness. Sometimes, Zahid would see the tears in his mother's eyes. He would lower his head and whisper to himself, "One day, I will become someone great. One day, I will turn all of my mother's tears into happiness." There was a girl in his school. Her name was Safia. She was unlike the other girls in the village. Her heart was full of kindness, compassion, and purity. Whenever she saw Zahid carrying his worn-out school bag and wearing torn clothes, she never mocked him. Instead, she respected his determination and hard work. Slowly, they grew closer. Not through secret promises, not through forbidden conversations, but through respect, prayers, and sincere feelings. Both of them understood that love was not merely sweet words. Love was sacrifice. Love was patience. Love was enduring pain and waiting faithfully. Years passed. Zahid achieved the highest grades in the province. Then one day, news arrived that changed his life forever. He had been selected for a scholarship to continue his higher education abroad. When Safia heard the news, her eyes filled with tears. She forced herself to smile, but deep inside, her heart was breaking, because she knew separation was never easy. On the day of Zahid's departure, they met beneath an old mulberry tree at the edge of the village. The air was silent. Even the birds seemed quiet. With a trembling voice, Safia said, "Zahid, even if years pass, I will wait for you." Hiding his tears, Zahid replied, "And I will come back." Safia looked into his eyes. "Promise?" Zahid placed his hand over his heart. "I promise until my very last breath." As the airplane disappeared into the sky, Safia kept watching. She did not know that this would be the last time she would ever see him. Life abroad was not easy for Zahid. He studied during the day. He worked at night. Some nights, he went to bed hungry. Other nights, he fell asleep with books still open in his hands. But whenever he felt hopeless, he remembered Safia's words, "I will wait for you." And Safia waited. Every day, every week, every month, every year, she kept all of Zahid's letters safely hidden. Whenever she missed him, she would place one of those letters against her chest and cry. But human dreams do not always come true. Safia's family became more determined with each passing year. Marriage proposals arrived one after another. Her mother would say, "My daughter, enough waiting." Her father would say, "We don't even know if he will ever return." Safia would cry and answer, "He will come back. He promised me." But no one listened. One night, Safia cried before God for hours. She raised her hands and prayed, "My Lord, if Zahid is not written in my destiny, then do not leave me alive without him." She prayed until dawn. Yet the next morning, her family finalized her marriage. Only a few days remained before the wedding. Safia stopped talking. Her smiles disappeared. The colors of life slowly faded from her eyes. She would sit alone, staring at Zahid's photograph and cry silently. On the night of her wedding, the women of the house dressed her as a bride. Everyone around her was happy. But Safia looked as if she were walking toward her own funeral. She quietly entered her room, locked the door, placed all of Zahid's letters before her. She kissed each one gently and whispered, "Zahid, I waited until the very last moment. I never broke my promise. It was fate that stood between us." The next morning, when her family entered the room, Safia was lying motionless in the corner. Her eyes were closed. Zahid's last letter was still in her hand, and a faint smile remained on her lips. She was gone. The songs of a wedding turned into cries of mourning. Her white bridal dress became her shroud. The wedding car became a funeral procession, and the entire village wept. Months later, Zahid returned home. His heart was filled with dreams. He had brought gifts for Safia. He wanted to tell her, "I am back." But when he saw her grave, his body trembled. The gifts fell from his hands, and he collapsed onto the earth, covering her grave. That night, he sat beside Safia's grave until dawn. He spoke to her as though she could hear him. "Safia, open your eyes. I came back. Look, I brought the colors you loved. You said you would wait for me. Why did you stop waiting?" But the graveyard remained silent. Years passed. Many years. Zahid married. He had children. He built a home. He became successful. Yet, the empty place in his heart was never filled. Every night he mentioned Safia's name in his prayers. Every year he visited her grave. He placed flowers there and sat quietly for hours. When he became an old man, one day his son asked, "Father, why do you visit this grave every year?" Tears filled Zahid's eyes. He answered softly, "My son, many people come into our lives. Many people leave. But the one who becomes a part of your soul never truly leaves." Placing his hand on the grave, he whispered, "Safia, people say time heals everything. But years have passed. The seasons changed. Snow came and melted away. Children grew up. My hair turned white. Yet your memory never grew old." On the final night of his life, Zahid visited Safia's grave once again. The sky was filled with stars. Through tears he whispered, "I am tired, Safia. I have waited for you for so many years. Perhaps the time has finally come for us to meet again." He prayed beside her grave until dawn. And when the first rays of sunlight touched the earth, Zahid closed his eyes for the last time. The villagers buried him beside Safia. And upon their two graves, only one sentence was written: "True love is not ended by death. It only changes the place of reunion."